Okay, so addendum 2, I've got a lot of wiring done today. Got my battery cables back on. Did a lot of groundwork too. The DH61 igniter that comes with the Aristo for the VVTI. I noticed that there was no wire for the tachometer on tach there. So I was able to put one in there, and I'm going to wire that straight to the tach in the car. I've read that is gonna actually work, but that remains to be seen. I still have to put a loom on all of these wires that I did. Like in the previous video, I told you the C1 connector should have been left, and it should have been wired under the intake manifold to go with the fat loom here. But it looks like I'm just gonna have to bring it in with all of these other ones. And one of the other things I did with the addendum 1 was the alternator, what was it, the power wire, yes. I just brought it straight out from where the old alternator connector is to the alternator on the JZ engine on the other side. Pay no attention to the beer on top of the engine. What else did I do today? I took the charge wire that was already coming out of the alternator there and soldered it to another wire going again. Gonna meet up with the fat loom there. I'm still thinking about, because I've got power, sense, and charge, I'm gonna definitely put all of those into the loom there. But I think I'm probably not gonna wire it up to the computer, because it seemed like the computer didn't care when I was running it on the engine stand. The engine ran pretty okay without the alternator. I think as long as you power up the ignition coils, the igniter, the fuel injectors, and the mass airflow sensor, it should just run. Now as far as how good does it run, I can't tell you that. That remains to be seen. I haven't got her out on the road yet. I haven't put this engine under a load just yet. I have run it, but I haven't driven it. So one thing about the igniter is that I'm not sure about this ground. I went ahead and screwed it into the existing cruise control because that was a convenient spot for me. So I think I'm going to do the tachometer signal in with this loom. And if you notice, here's a ground that I might not have needed, but being in the field of electronics, it seems to me that one of the worst things, one of the biggest problems you have with electronic circuits is poor grounds. So I went ahead and put a dedicated ground to this right here on the firewall, and it's also connected to the battery cable ground. So ipso facto, it's connected directly to the battery in a way. And I did the same thing here on the back of the wall here where you have your body tag. There's usually a tiny little wire coming from here to the engine, but I went ahead and used the old positive battery lead because I've got a new one now, a bigger, fatter one. But I used the old positive lead and I wired it straight to the intake manifold here, which is also where my negative ground is wired for the battery. So again, I'm pretty much connected directly to the battery ground for that. I'm about to power this thing up probably tomorrow. I want to get some wire loom on it. I want to take the spark plugs out and run the starter for about 30 seconds just to get my new cams primed, because I put some Tomei pond cams in here, the street drop-in cams that are supposed to have a little bit more duration, the same lift as the factory, but I think factory was about 230 something degrees. The pond cams are about 250. Am I right about that? 250 something. So we got about 20 more degrees of duration, which is supposed to make the turbo spool a little bit harder and sooner, hopefully. I did a lot of little modifications here too. A lot of guys are talking about using the Gte 7M power steering reservoir. This is actually the 7M GTE reservoir. What I went ahead and did was I took the bracket that was on it already, and I bent it so that it would fit right here got a little L bracket right here. So this guy still needs to be primed with fluid tomorrow. I'm going to try to do that as well. This is the adjustable fuel pressure regulator that I've got instead of the factory pressure regulator, in hopes that I can get a good fuel air ratio for off boost conditions. Somewhere around 14.5 to 1 would be ideal, although I'm expecting to see about 12 to 1 right now without manipulating the fuel pressure. Trying to think of what else, other little things I could probably add that would make this video interesting. Again, this one's just kind of for posterity and to look back on. This is just some test connectors that are on the loom I decided to keep. This pretty much connects all your grounds together with a clip right here. That's not really doing much right here. But right here is where I took the Japanese computer loom, which I believe on the Aristo, the computer goes somewhere on this side of the car. I just don't know where, and I don't have any space. As you can see, real estate is kind of like it is in Holland. You can't build out, you got to build up, I guess. So my solution was to make everything long, solder all these wires and put new wires on, and just make the whole thing longer with a bunch of cables, and then translate the cables back into the car there. And you can see I still got a few wires I got to work out. I accidentally cut the speed sensor and the reverse lights, so I've spliced those together again and soldered them. So I'm pretty much in good shape now. I gotta put the oxygen sensor back in to my downpipe that I had to fabricate, because nobody makes a downpipe for a Borg Warner 363 on a MA70 body with a 2JZ engine. So, you know, it is what it is. I'm just trying to get this all working. Hopefully I can at least drive it around. I'm not trying to race anybody right now at this point. I'm just trying to get it to be a reliable vehicle. I want to do a video on the air conditioner and how I got that integrated and converted to R134A, and also all the grinding that takes place with the power steering bracket. But that's another whole nother issue right there. And I did a video on the deleted ETCSI thing, drive-by-wire. I think a lot of guys are talking about with that still installed, the computer's not seeing everything that normally was there. So as a result, you're not revving past 3,000 RPMs. I think that's primarily the reason why the computer's putting this dude into limp mode. But if you have it totally bypassed, then you know, there's not much the computer can do except just turn off, which I hope it doesn't do that. Anyway, another thing I've done is I've adapted the cruise control throttle piece to this throttle body in hopes that I can get the regular cruise control working. My plan is that, you know, in regular throttle operation here, the cruise control is sliding like it ought to, and you can see the slack is getting made up out here, which I don't mind that working as long as it doesn't get in a bind. But let's say the cruise control picks up, it looks like it would sort of do the same thing. You got slop here. I'm hoping this doesn't become a dangerous problem, but I'm gonna try it anyway because I'm that brave. But I made this little bracket here. Usually I weld, but I didn't have the balls to weld that day. I just decided to use self-tapping screws and just kind of mock this up and see if it would work. So I'm still hoping this is going to be all right. I'm noticing the map sensor probably shows the computer for the JZ the amount of boost it's got, but this is not going to do much good for my boost gauge inside the car. The old boost gauge is over here. I'm sorry, the old boost sensor, to be correct with it. It hooks up to this tree right here where all the hoses are, and then I guess the boost pressure translates to some electrical signal here. According to the TSRM, white, orange, and brown. These go to the back of the boost gauge and give it that 0 to, I think it's 8 psi. Only thing is, if I start boosting harder, and I'm sure I will one day, I'm going to need a different map sensor, or I'm going to have to figure out how to adapt to this map sensor to read it and get maybe a different boost gauge that can go higher than 8 psi. But anyway, that's the progress right now. And once I get this thing to start and run, I'm going to take another video of that. And then once I work out all the little details on the dash, I'm going to do another video on that as well. Because my plan now is to put the dash sort of half-ass in place and plug everything up. See if what instrumentation works. And if anything else needs some work, I'm going to do that. And I'll do an update on that as well. So, cheers.